So today we are going to learn the difference of weight loss and fat loss. And what I'm going to try to do is tie everything together from Antone when he did his first seminar on EPOC and Harrison's seminar that did a couple weeks ago on nutrition. Kind of make everything come full circle and try and tie those together as best as I can. So the difference between fat loss and weight loss. Quick little thing about me on there. I have a bachelor's of science from UWL, physics major, biomedical concentration. Was for a dual degree for physical therapy. Kind of got in physical therapy studies in a ass backwards kind of way. Did too much research, and then they said, well, we feel bad for you, come on in. And then I left, and now I'm here. So yeah, got a lot of research looking at knees for males and females, studying kind of angles and why ACL tears happen. Also in progress, Precision Nutrition Level 1 coach Harrison is almost done with his. I'm doing the same one. And then I'm also in progress of getting certified for a golf fitness specialist. Kind of already know what I'm doing on there, but it kind of looks a little bit better on paper to have that certification. So a little bit on that. Alright, so I'm going to like to start this session with pictures and definitions. And I think that's going to make it the clearest picture possible of what I'm trying to paint. And after we get going, we're pretty much going to forget about that weight word, and it's all fat from there. Okay? And the physiology of fat loss. So fat, unusually wide or thick, having a lot of extra flesh on your body. That's from Merriam-Webster. And weight is a measurement that indicates how heavy a person or thing is. Key word there is measurement. Okay? It's not what you think it is. It's a measurement. Here's a little picture of not the same female, but of two females of the same height. One's 127 pounds, one is 136 pounds. Why do I show this picture? If you were to look at one at a time, you would probably say the one out of the 127 pounds is out of shape, and you don't know what weight she is. You're just looking at her at her body type. But then you look at the female next to her that's 136 pounds, she's got a little toning on there, she's got a slimmer stomach, she's got more of the curvature, and that's what we're kind of basing everything off of when we look at something. But what you don't see is that muscle is more dense than fat. Okay, and that what we're using it for this purpose is muscle is kind of like that weight, that measurement, compared to the fat measurement. So, same height, this girl's actually 9 pounds heavier, but when you look at it, you wouldn't know. Okay? Another quick picture. That is a picture of a true 5-pound mass of fat on the left, and compared to a 5-pound mass of muscle on the right. So you can see how much more space the fat takes up. And that's what it looks like on the body. We just got done looking at the picture of the two females. This kind of puts it into full circle with that. That's a standard ballpoint pen on there, just to kind of show you the size of everything, how much more surface area the fat consumes in your body than a muscle does. So muscle and fat weigh the same thing. I always tell people kind of like you hear the riddle, what weighs more, a pound of fat, or a pound of feathers, or a pound of bricks? Well, it's the same. 5 pounds of fat, 5 pounds of muscle is the same, but look at the space that it takes up. So what are you after? We need to be very clear on what our goals and accomplishments are, and then we are looking at fat. Okay? Weight's also going to be on here. Fat is the macronutrient, not person. Weight is a number, and this is what we get caught up on. Everyone gets caught up on the scale. Unfortunately, we need to use that number in some circumstances to figure out calculations. Kind of a poor way to do it, but that's all we have because we can't take a body fat percentage of everybody, a true one. A lot of time, a lot of money. Some of it's done in universities. Sometimes you can get into studies that you can talk to like UWL and you can volunteer to get dumped in the tank and find your true body fat that way. But again, we're not after weight, but that's what we get caught up on. We're after fat. We want to get rid of it. Just a little quote here from a book that I read called Metabolic Flexibility for Fat Loss. Scale weight is fickle, and it's never a linear progression from A to B. It changes based on how much water you drink, how much activity you get, and how much food you eat. Scale weight has little to do with your body composition, and that can be easily manipulated by cycling calories and macronutrients based upon your activity levels. There's your weight in a nutshell. This is why it goes up and down based on what you do, what you drink, what you eat. Okay? I also tell people one bad meal is not going to make you fat. One good meal is not going to make you healthy. You got to remember that. Okay? So if you have a cheat meal every once in a while, it's okay. Alright, so now that we've kind of gone through the difference of fat and weight, we're just going to stick with fat. Weight things out of the picture here. So now we're going to dive in. Types of fat in our body. Adipose tissue. And that is made up of subcutaneous fat, which is located right beneath the skin, and this is the fat that you can pinch. This is all the stuff around your body that you can grab a hold of. Visceral fat is located around your internal organs, and this is the stuff that you can't pinch. Both of them have a little bit different properties. Both of them can go up and down compared to kind of what you do and the functions of your daily lives. But those are the two that we're going to focus more on today. In general, more of just the adipose tissue. And then there's an ectopic fat in your body located around the organs. It's unharmful, kind of, it's just there. Kind of some of it's on genetics, some of it's on the body type. Some of it you can't touch, and some of it will go away when you battle the fat loss bug. Okay? Don't really want to focus on that one too much. So the physiology of fat. There's a lot to this. I'm going to try and make it as basic as I can and make it so you all can understand it. Adipose tissue is made up of adipocytes. These are fat cells. So this is our fat tissue in our body is made up of little fat cells in it. These cells store fat and are constantly active during our daily functions. So, depending on our activity, our food intake, or lack thereof, stress, hormones, and other bodily functions, these adipocytes are constantly regulating what goes into and out of the cell based on a number of those things. Sometimes both of them can happen at once, all of them can happen at once. You know, you could be playing football while drinking a Gatorade, eating a Snickers bar, and then worrying about the exam that you have tomorrow. A lot of stuff going on there. Activity, stress, hunger, everything else. They are active by means of regulating certain things into and out of the cell, and this is by means of free fatty acids and triglycerides. And for the most part today, we're just going to kind of stick with the free fatty acids. Triglycerides I'll touch on here and there. That's kind of how the cell regulates itself and how it functions. Free fatty acids are constantly moving into and out of the cell, but this is again dependent on the functions that I mentioned before. An example, an elevation of insulin in the blood can cause an inward net flux of free fatty acids into the adipose tissue. Secretion of insulin is caused from high blood sugar levels, which is due to the consumption of certain carbohydrates. So if you remember what Harrison was talking about 2-3 weeks ago, when he was saying kind of like the instances of starch and sugar and how they have an effect in the body that raises insulin levels very high. There's also carbohydrates that don't do that. And these are on the low glycemic index scale. He posted a list on his slides that kind of showed good and bad foods type of thing. I also have that list that I send out to my clients to make sure they understand it. Kind of, in a sense, memorize it so that you know if you ever caught in a situation like at a restaurant or away from your peer, kind of think like, okay, think a little bit, what do I got to do here? What can I do to help me out? With a wide range of carbs means that there's a wide range of effects. And this is that glycemic index scale. You can look up glycemic index and on the internet and it'll pop up and you'll see all the foods that fall into the low and high and moderate values, and it'll show the effects on some of them and it'll kind of show where they stand. In a sense, you want to try and stick to low glycemic. Now a lot of times you'll see these foods on high glycemic and you might think, gosh, I love pineapple, I love mango, I love those sugary foods like that with natural sugar, fructose, not this artificial sugar and added sugar. You can still eat the pineapple, you can still eat your potatoes, but you want to try and get them post-workout, whether it's cardio or strength training. They have a better benefit. They have a more beneficial effect than what they would at any other time because of the starches and the sugars in there. Okay. To base your diet more solely on the low glycemic index means that you're never going to really raise that insulin levels because the blood sugar levels in your body don't really get released or get too high. And this has the opposite effect of what I just talked about, which means an outward net flux of the free fatty acids, which equals fat loss. Okay? Now this isn't the whole piece of the puzzle right here that's going to solve all your problems. There's more to it, which we'll go over in just a moment. but that's what we want. Okay? This is your winning formula right here. Outward net flux of those free fatty acids that will help you with fat loss. Okay? Triglycerides, again, are lipids in the blood. I'll go back to those in just a moment when we talk more about hormones and things like that. All right, so how do we actually lose or gain fat? Jay Teta, a nutritional dietitian, calls it a three-step process. First step is release. Fat has to be released from a fat cell. This is called lipolysis. Step 2 is delivery. Fat then has to travel through the bloodstream and be delivered to a cell that will burn it. Therefore, blood supply to and from the fat cells is important. And what that means, more blood moving to and from these certain parts of your body will help wake up the free fatty acids and move them to places that they can get burned, okay? Which ideally is muscle cells. The burning is the third step. And finally, fat has to enter this destination cell, which is usually a muscle cell, and be burned. This is called lipid oxidation. I'll go into a little bit more detail on that a little bit later, because there's certain types of organelles that are located within our cells that are actually the ones doing the burning, and I'll talk about those when we get there. The physiology of fat loss. Fat loss can occur in a few different ways. Number 1 is nutritional changes, nutritional value. Number 2 is exercise, which involves strength training, cardiovascular training, and conditioning. Supplementation is also a way to lose fat, and a big one on there, hormones. Not a lot of people think about the hormone part of it. That plays a huge role, and more importantly, insulin and cortisol, which is the stress hormone. Okay? They call it the belly fat hormone. And I'll talk a little bit more about that coming up here too. Adaptation is key, especially over time. So, the longer that you stay active, you become more involved in fitness. You have to change your routine. Your body can catch up and adapt to you, so you have to kind of stay ahead of the body and adapt to it. For a person that's beginning their fitness endeavors, usually within the first year, you can pretty much go, if you can add 5 pounds to the bar every week, do it. If you can run an extra mile every week, do it safely, in a safe manner, obviously. But for somebody that's been doing it for 5 or 6 years, that's when they really have to get nitpicky, variation, be very critical, and put themselves through a very structured program to see results. Otherwise, their body's just kind of like, yeah, good luck. So, adaptation is key. Nutrition. We need to eat less than what we use for our daily energy, but not too much less. About 300 to 400 calories below your metabolic rate. That can be figured out with a trainer. Otherwise, you can do it online. Just look up BMR calculation. It'll ask you for your information. Boom, it's there. Ideally, you want to eat between 300 and 400 calories below that, except for extreme or severe circumstances. Then you can go to about 700 calories below. Food quality and quantity are critical. As I stated before, low glycemic carbohydrates are absolutely the best choice in conjunction with proper amounts of protein and fat for a good overall diet and to promote fat loss. Like Harrison stated in his seminar, protein has more of a thermal index indicator in your body. Your body uses more energy to break down protein than it does for a carbohydrate. Fat is up there too, so it's kind of the more fat, more protein in the diet will help you, one, be full, burn more calories while you're doing it, and hopefully avoid the carbs. Some good choices of low glycemic carbs. Now these are not all of them, but these are my go-tos when I talk to anybody inclined to remember. Brown rice, berries, apples, other fruits, sweet potatoes, whole grains, and quinoa. Harrison also mentioned in his seminar that sweet potatoes do have a high glycemic index when they are baked. They do, but the starches in them help bring that down a little bit. So it's not as drastic as what it looks like on the scale. Okay? It is better to boil them. They stay even lower. And ideally, that's what we want, but don't get caught up in the whole baked sweet potato thing. Avoid the sugar, because this results in insulin secretion. Starches do the same thing. So this is why we want to try and do them post-workout, in particular strength training workouts, because our muscles need the energy and need the resources, nutritional value back into them, so they can help you function and burn more calories when you're out of the gym. Once again, high protein and high fat and low carb diets have shown promise. Strength training. This can add a huge boost to your fat loss process. Hit the free weights and go heavy from time to time. And I don't mean go heavy every single week. You'll, in an ideal world, heavy at least once a month. If your body can take it, 2, 3, maybe you do a whole week of heavy weightlifting. Just going through the proper procedures when you do that. Adaptation is incredibly necessary, especially over time. I already kind of talked a little bit about the beginners to experts, more of like inexperienced to overexperienced or really experienced type of trainers or trainees. Adaptation is more critical as you get further along into your journey of fitness. There are some studies that show some differences between trained and untrained people and how they have similar physiological effects doing like cardio workouts or weight training workouts, but then there's also some different hormonal release and stuff like that going on in the body. And I'll go over a slide on the next page here. As we stated before, more blood movement getting into around the organs, around those fat cells can help you burn more fat because you're wicking away all the fat cells, carrying them to the muscle cells, and they're burning. A little study by Horowitz and Klein in 2000 showed that increasing capillaries around muscle cells can help more blood transfusion and all that stuff go on through there to help with the fat burning process. When you strength train, you want to train total body. Anton covered that in his seminar. He also covered that you should use compound exercises. Don't settle for bicep curls and tricep pushdowns every day. Try to make it a little bit more upbeat. Some of the machines out there are kind of the same thing. They get kind of caught up on the tricep pushdown and bicep area. If you can stay in that free weight realm and add a little bit more spice to your workouts, I know it kind of is not the thing that you want to do when you are working out, but you have to do it. So, like for instance, on a bicep curl, add a squat and then a curl to it, or a lunge and then a curl. Get it going a little bit so you get some blood flowing. Circuit training is an ideal method for fat loss. Circuit training is adding 3 to 10 exercises in a row and going from each exercise until you're done, and then you take a little rest and you do it all over again. Sometimes 1 set is enough, sometimes 2 sets, 3 sets, 5 sets, depending on how intense it is. And then remember what Anton discussed, EPOC is very critical. You get that from strength training and a little bit of conditioning. If you create more muscle, you burn more fat. For every pound of muscle you create, you burn 50 more calories that day, and studies have shown that most of that's usually from fat calories just because of the blood movement in the body and your metabolism that's been increased. Here's a little diagram, a figure of trained athletes and untrained athletes and insulin release and their plasma insulin levels. The untrained athletes are in the purple, and the trained athletes are in the, we'll go orange or salmon. What that's showing is that the trained athletes and untrained athletes both have less insulin in their blood over a certain amount of exercise, over 30 minutes. It decreases as you go. But the more experienced athlete is lower to begin with, and it's lower at the end. So the more experience you have, the better equipped your body will be to battle the insulin hormone. Does that all make sense? That happens within the skeletal muscle. That also battles the control for diabetes. Cardio training, 2 big types, aerobic training and anaerobic training. Aerobic training is using oxygen as fuel. This is usually low intensity and long in duration. Fat loss is the outcome, but it is minimal. Dr. Lenny Kravitz stated in one of his articles that a full-aged male has enough fat in his body to survive for 65 days if he wouldn't eat and be like fully nourished with water and everything else. From energy. And that's not saying a lot of stuff, but from energy. That's how much fat is in the body at one time that can be used if needed for energy. Anaerobic training. Your body is the energy source. Again, this is ATP. Harrison kind of covered it in his seminar. That's just what our body uses to complete certain obstacles, like with weight training or sprinting, something of that nature. That's with anaerobic training. This is usually high intensity and short to moderate durations. Again, this is something like sprinting or like the uphill part in a spin class or a biking thing. Any kind of sport movement or like a power movement, squats, deadlifts, power cleans. This is a tackle in football, a golf swing, and golf. Muscle adaptation and some conditioning is involved with anaerobic training. If you get stronger, you can usually perform the movements faster, which I'm not really going to get into today, but that's kind of how that works. And then calories burned is the outcome, and calories burned is where it's at. What I mean by that, I say that in aerobic training, fat loss is the outcome. I don't ever tell any of my clients to go sit in the treadmill for an hour and make sure you sit in the low intensity level because you're going to burn more fat that way. I always have them doing intervals. I always tell them to do intervals. And it's because more calories burned are what you actually want because of the epoch factor that Anton discussed and that we can go over time and time again. So you burn more calories, you're going to be having more of an epoch kind of value. And you want to try and do that in the shortest amount of time. Okay? So again, calories burned is the outcome. Calories burned is where it's at. Don't stick in that low intensity because you think that's where you're going to burn the most fat. You will burn fat from there, but it's minimal. There's so much in your body that it won't really do anything.
Jordan, can you say what EPOC stands for?
Excessive post-exercise oxygen consumption. So it's all of the oxygen that your body needs to bring in to maintain internal balance, and that usually means that your metabolism is raised. And that can go on from 30 minutes after your workout from up to 2 days. So like if you do a super crazy, heavy, intense workout, where you're barely making it out of the gym, it's been shown in studies that 2 days after that, you can still be burning calories from that workout because of EPOC. Conditioning is different than cardio. Usually conditioning is for sport. It's also for results. Okay? Metabolic training and high intensity interval training are part of the conditioning. Extremely high intensity and short durations. This is usually within 90% of your max heart rate, if not higher. So this is like the 9 out of 10 scale, close to the 10 out of 10 scale. This is a substantial adaptation in all areas. This is beneficial for adaptation in all areas. If you're looking for that next breakthrough, metabolic conditioning is usually what people are lacking on because it's hard to get to that point. It's hard to push your body to that point. It should be difficult to complete. You should be wanting to get off the treadmill, or you should be wanting to leave the gym after the first interval on metabolic conditioning. Again, it doesn't last that long. Usually it's like 3 to 5 minutes. That's because that's how intense it is. If it's done in the beginning of the workouts or at the end of the workouts, it's shown the best promise for results. If you do it at the beginning of the workout, you can kind of set your body into this big kind of overall, state where you're going to burn more calories through your workout. If you do it at the end, again, you have an epoch factor there. Results, results, results. That's kind of, again, what conditioning does. A lot of people will sit in here and do cardio, but not a lot of people will condition. Okay? You got to get that conditioning in there. High intensity training. You got to push it. There's a lot of our machines out there will have the programs built into them. Do them, or you can do your own. There's really no set way to do high intensity interval training. Just kind of do a duration of fast, duration of slow. Again, adaptation is still key. You can't do the same metabolic conditioning exercise or session every single time. You have to switch that up too. So maybe after a week or two, then it's time to switch. You can do it with weights, you can do it with cardio, you can do it outside in sprints. It's just a high intensity bout of exercise followed by an active recovery. Alright, now I'm going to talk a little bit about that organelle in a cell called the mitochondria. This is the guy that's kind of known as the power plant in a cell. This is what our cells use to create energy, which helps us in the long run. So it creates energy by processing fat and other fuels in the body to create usable energy for our body. Again, this is ATP. This process starts at the beginning of an exercise, ideally your warm-up, and it can last throughout the session. But it can decrease if the intensity gets too high. I don't want you to get too worked up about that. Again, I'm going to go back to EPOC. It's a huge factor in this, and a lot of people don't realize that. If you stick around a session of training that's around the low to moderate intensity level, there's a chance you'll probably burn more calories, but it might not last as long as you step out of the gym. If you go through a type of training where you hit a heavy weight, or if you get a super metabolic type of interval or circuit in there, again, when you step out of the gym, you're still burning calories, which are fat calories, more likely than not. More on the mitochondria. Can we increase the mitochondria in our cells? Well, I guess my name says it, or the name says it there, mitochondrial biogenesis, so it is possible. This can be performed by both trained and untrained athletes, and I'm going to talk a little bit about the studies here that went through that and showed that. Ideally, you can do this all by exercise. You can't really do it through nutrition, through anything else. It's all exercise, strength training and interval training. A study that was done in 2010 by Little and Company, 7 young men who were previously trained based on their VO2 max values, kind of how much oxygen they can bring in a moment and use their body. Don't really want to get into that. They performed 6 training sessions over 2 weeks of time. Each session had 8 to 12 intervals at 60 seconds each, at around 355 watts at the high end, and then with only 75-second recovery at 30 watts. Now, watts is a unit of power. It's on all the machines out there. I usually tell people not to worry about it. In this circumstance, I'm just going to let you know that this is a really, really nasty interval. Like this is 9.5, 10 out of 10 for 60 seconds, kind of like that Wingate test that Anton mentioned in his seminar. And then they only have 75 seconds to recover from it, and then they're doing it again. After 6 sessions, they found that 56% increase in the previously trained subjects of the mitochondria. So their cells, they did a muscle biopsy, increased their mitochondria by 56%. This means that their body is now 56% more efficient, or the mitochondria are now 56% more abundant to help burn cells, fat cells in their body. There's also other methods that can improve your mitochondria count. Another study in 2013 has shown that reduced carbohydrate availability results in enhanced skeletal muscle oxidative capacity. Now this isn't essentially an increase in mitochondria, but what this does, an enhanced skeletal muscle oxidative capacity allows you to bring more blood in there, kind of what I talked earlier about lipid oxidation. That's the process of actually burning the fat in the cell. Reduced carbohydrates during cardio has shown an increase in that. Another study has shown that subjects who are in an overnight fasted state and are in a glycogen depleted, which means low carbohydrate again, condition, may further enhance mitochondrial biogenesis. So what they're saying is that when these subjects would come in first thing in the morning, after not, in a fasted state, whatever the time was in that, and a low carbohydrate diet or low glycogen levels in their system, they would do intervals, and it showed that they would increase their mitochondrial count. I should add that this study only went on for 2 weeks as well, and after 2 weeks they kind of hit a lull. After they started testing their subjects who were trained and untrained, they didn't really happen after 2 weeks. So that was doing the same type of metabolic conditioning. So they were assuming at the end of the study that if they switched their conditioning up, it would change the mitochondrial count to a higher number. Keep in mind, these studies are exactly what they are. They're studies. There's small sample sizes. There's more and more going on every day. This won't work for everyone, but this has showed pretty good results for clients of mine that I can get in there to go in the morning without eating and doing some cardio. I do have some clients that struggle and have told me that they were in the bathroom 10 minutes into their cardio session because they were throwing up because they didn't feel well. So you kind of have to experiment a little bit and pick your poison. Change is key. Again, I can't say that enough. Change is key. You can't keep doing the same things in the gym every single time. You can create overload, you can create variation, and you can get away with it for so long, but when you feel like you get stuck, that's when you need to change. Supplementation. Unfortunately, there's a pill for that, they say. So, I'm not really going to talk anymore about this. I don't really like the idea of taking a pill for fat loss. Some of it has shown promise. I have tried them from time to time. I think it's just more of like the whole caffeine boost that you get out of it. Usually they're full of caffeine. Taking them before the workout, you just get kind of red-faced and sweat about 30 times more than you already do. I don't support supplementation of fat loss at all. Okay? So I'm going to talk about that because I want to get to hormones. Hormones are compounds in the body, and they are secreted or taken back when stuff happens. So whatever function you're doing, again, like I mentioned before, activity, eating, sleeping, any of that are when hormones take effect. Some hormones affect fat loss and fat gain differently in men and women because of predisposed levels. This is the whole testosterone and estrogen factor here. Looking at certain type of enzymes in the body, Lipoprotein lipase and hormone-sensitive lipase are enzymes affected by hormones. And with this chart here, we can look at how hormones affect these two enzymes. When insulin is released, LPL goes up, it's increased, which is bad because LPL is a fat-storing enzyme. You can see that HSL goes down, and that's what we want higher of. Stress is a positive for both, or a plus to both, an increase on both. That's because there is good and bad stress. Cortisol, again, is that belly fat hormone, and it's just located in different spots around the body for the receptors. And obviously there is good stress, like exercise, and there's bad stress, like you know what. So, HSL, that hormone-sensitive lipase, again, is hormone-sensitive, not calorie-sensitive. Hormone-sensitive, okay? Hormone-sensitive. Stress affects both genders. Catecholamines are fight or flight type of hormones, epinephrine, that type of thing, parasympathetic and sympathetic nervous system. I don't really want to get too much into that today, because I want to talk about insulin. So, as we discussed, insulin is not our ally in the fat loss battle. Why is insulin secreted into our body? A little hint, cupcakes and cookies. When we eat sugar, insulin goes up. Again, starch has that same effect. Not quite as drastic, but the same effect. So now let's combine a food that causes insulin secretion in our body with a type of bad fat. So I'm talking like trans fat, or something that's super, super high in saturated fats that are hydrogenated oils, things like that. We can probably name a few foods like that, because they're everywhere and they're inexpensive and they probably lack a lot of protein. These are foods like French fries, like pizza, like ice cream, like cookies, like cupcakes, all the stuff that you can buy for like $1 and you think is so good because it's $1. Bad. Okay? This is not a good scenario. Cortisol, that stress hormone. Types of stress: physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual. Cortisol is fat storing and fat releasing, again, which means we have good and bad stress respectively. Cortisol is known as that belly fat hormone. It affects both the body and the mind. It affects the mind because bad stress can actually tell your brain to eat more comforting foods. Okay, so it actually makes you crave sugar because it releases another type of chemical in your body that makes your body crave sugar just to function, because stress tears you down internally. It affects the body because certain type of receptors of cortisol are usually located around the belly. Okay, belly fat hormone, the receptors of these are located all along your internal organs, like the small intestine and large intestine. So when these nutrients are secreted into the body, these cortisol receptors are sitting right there. So when stuff gets released, they don't have to go very far because it's a perfect match. And that's why they stick around the belly. So when you're stressed out, it doesn't have to go very far. That's why we gain weight when we're stressed. I should say weight, fat. Receptors are located throughout our body and more abundant in certain areas. This is different between male and females. And what I mean by that is the whole apple and pear. Usually males are just known as like the apple shape. They kind of, you can see more weight above the waist for the apple shape type stuff. Males, a lot of times, will hold their fat a little bit back here, and then also kind of leading down into the waist just above it. The pear-shaped, that moves down a little bit. They hold more weight below their waist. Cortisol in females is especially abundant right here on the love handle area, and then big time on the inside and outside of the legs. So when you're stressed out and you start eating these bad foods because you're stressed out, or when you're stressed out, again, these receptors are so active. And I'm not telling you this happens every single time, but it's easier for fat to get stored when this all happens, kind of coming in a chain reaction. Insulin and cortisol are a bad, bad combination. Like every other team besides Green Bay Packers and Wisconsin Badgers, bad. Like real bad. I had to get it out there. But seriously, they're bad. Okay? Paired together, these two hormones can do some serious damage to your fat loss goals. Think of it as eating and emotions Now eating while you're emotional, we'll just call it emotional eating. Okay, we all do it, we're all there, we have to be in control of that. Now let's add those foods we came up with earlier, pizza, ice cream, French fries, cookies, all that stuff that we crave when we're in a bad mood, and then we'll combine them because we're in a bad mood. Now we're in trouble. Okay? This is not the situation you want to be in. Unfortunately, this is a situation that we are all in every single day. We have to learn how to control that and battle that. Exercise does help. So we got to do that. Eating well does help because then you'll treat your body better, your body will treat you better. And we're there. So we covered a lot of information today, and while it seems like we went through a great detail, we are still far from the truth. Okay, there's still a lot more that I could talk about, but I didn't really go into that detail because it would probably wreck me, and then you guys wouldn't learn anything from it anyway. There's books out there, there's more stuff that I teach my clients, there's more stuff that we're learning. So go back and watch this seminar along with the other two seminars from Harrison and Antone. These videos are on YouTube. We post them on our Facebook page. If you can't find them, let me know. But these are all part of a series that we wanted to put out. So start from the beginning with Antone, get to Harrison's, finish up with this one. In the end of it all, you have to do what works best for you. That's in regards to nutritional stuff, that's in regards to exercise, that's in regards to your work habit. If you have to work out 3 times a day, 30 minutes a piece to make ends meet, then that's what you got to do. If you got to be in here for 2 hours at one time, that's what you have to do. You have to figure out what works best for you, and you have to do it well, and then change it up as you go. We're always at the tip of the iceberg, okay? There's never something where we think like we're done. There's never a point where I think like, okay, I'm right where I want to be, right where I should be, just about done with this. There's always more to do. So we have to think like that when we're battling fat loss. It's the same thing, because the fat's always going to try to be a step ahead of us, so we have to battle back. Kind of a little final word here, again from the author from the Metabolic Flexibility book. I tried to write something like this, and it literally turned out to be word for word pretty much what he was saying. So I erased mine and put his back up. Eat the proper amount of mostly healthy whole foods. Calories matter. So does food quality. Don't starve yourself. Eat foods you enjoy. Get enough protein. Don't restrict carbs or fat or anything else unless you have a medical reason to. Get regular exercise. Lift heavy things a few times a week. Your own body totally counts as a heavy thing. We forget that from time to time as well. Usually we weigh quite a bit of weight. When you squat, you're squatting quite a bit of weight. You got to remember that your body's a weapon too. You are not flawed. Self-respect is the world's best douchebag filter. Don't rely on bloggers for healthcare. See a doctor if you have unexplained symptoms. Read the science for yourself. Don't rely on diet books or authors' interpretations of it. Consistency trumps perfection every time. Cellulite is normal. Fruit is food. Eat the yolk. Nobody is perfect. He had this on the last page of his book, and I thought it was pretty awesome. I like to read it a lot, kind of from time to time. Again, I thought of it right when I got done with this. I'm like, oh, I'm going to create my own. It was literally like word for word. So, got to use that. References on there. And is there any questions? Okay. Eat the yolk. That's about it.